The impossible conversation. In a post-truth world, we need a safe place to have conversations about things that really matter. In the business-as-usual world, we just can't talk about the insanity that's now called normal. And we don't talk about our core disconnection from the web of life. The impossible conversation, where we can come together to fully feel what we're going through and discern the sober reality of the world around us. The impossible conversation, where we can set our sights on fully reconnecting with our deeper, wiser selves, others, and Earth. The impossible conversation, where thought and activist leaders can explore new ways of being in the face of our global predicaments. The impossible conversation. Welcome to this safe circle. All right. So welcome, everybody. I am Dean Walker. This is The Impossible Conversation, and I am thrilled to have my good buddy, Carolyn Baker, show up today. And,
hello, everybody.
And we're at the end of March here in 2018, and it's been an extraordinary, every day has been extraordinary in this year following 2017, which was breathtaking nearly on a daily basis on the political side, on the environmental side, you name it, it's been wild. And I specifically wanted to get Carolyn and me together and to have us both share a few of the events, the pieces of news that have been crossing our screen in the past few days and weeks, and just chat about it. And so...
and we're going to chat irreverently.
Oh, please do. And Carolyn, there you are.
Yeah.
Please begin the irreverence.
Sure, after I clear my throat. Now, let me just say that my dog is in the room with me, and whenever I'm working online, he loves to get behind the curtain and look out the window. So if you see the curtain going back and forth, pay no attention to the dog behind the curtain. So nothing mysterious there. So yeah, I've been publishing the Daily News Digest now for more than 10 years. And it's a subscription-based thing. And it's cut into sections: economic, environmental, geopolitical, scandal and corruption, culture. And then I have a section toward the end on inspiration. But one of the first things that I want to say about the news in these times is that if we are going to be woke, as the young people who are spearheading the March for Their Lives talk about, if we're going to be woke, we have got to understand the news in the context of collapse of systems and planetary predicament. We cannot have the old paradigms of left and right and war and peace and all of the business as usual perspectives. And that's how I put out the Daily News Digest is, what does all of this have to do with collapse? What does all of it have to do with catastrophic climate change? So I just want to set the context before I go into anything. And I don't know, this week I was really grabbed by watching an interview of Amy Siskind by Tom Hartman. And Amy Siskind is quite a human being. She has, I think even before the inauguration of Trump, she has maintained a website called theweeklylist.org, theweeklylist.org, and her last name is spelled Siskind. And her argument is, in the 1930s, or 40s, when Germans woke up to the nightmare that they had created in Hitler, they said, well, like, how the fuck did this happen? And so Amy, right from the jump, said, I'm going to keep a list every week of how we're losing democracy, how we're losing our freedoms. So that's what her list is about. And it's really quite complete. And every week she goes in depth, particularly on that topic. So I highly recommend Amy. Yeah, not that the United States is any bastion of democracy, but what little shreds we have are slipping away. And, and that's what happens in the context of collapse. People lose freedoms.
So Carolyn, if I could, yesterday when you made some comments on the DND about this very thing, or maybe it was this morning, I remember you particularly pointing out that it sneaks up on us.
Yeah.
It's not just one big event in one day, that it shows us stark contrast, and everybody can see, oh, well, yeah, that's clearly a bad thing now. Mm-hmm. That it's more like a creeping tide. And so that's why this kind of a list is important, because otherwise, like the boiling frogs, we won't realize it till it's too late.
And you've been keeping your own list, Dean, of environmental events, right? Haven't you, or something like that?
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
You've been keeping your own list of ecological and environmental events, haven't you? For some
Yeah, I have, and I have something for today that I'm happy to chime in, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to kind of round out if you had some particular items beyond Amy Siskind that you wanted to point out. You're welcome to continue, but if you're ready for me to talk about my environmental shocker of the moment, I'd be happy to change gears.
Yeah, please go ahead and do that, and then I'll bounce off of that. No problem.
So just to put it in context, I'm not sure when folks will get around to watching this. So this week, in the end of March 2018, one of the bigger items that's been on the news is Stormy Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
Adult film star par excellence, is on 60 Minutes, and she does her somewhat disclosure-oriented talking about her brief affair with Donald Trump, our president, and that got plenty of airplay. There, of course, many other things that are even more trivial or less consequential than that have been filling the airwaves of mainstream media. And I've been looking real hard in this past week in particular to find one mention of a panel from a global panel from the UN has been meeting in Colombia. And the main purpose of this particular panel, this is not the IPCC, which primarily deals with climate change. These folks deal with basically habitat, the health of global habitat of all kinds. And this is the work of hundreds and hundreds of scientists who volunteer, like the IPCC crew does, to put together reports about what's the state of the habitat in all the different aspects, all the different areas of the world, all the different diverse examples of habitat that we count on for our living. And basically the bottom line is it's all bad news. And this, like the IPCC, is an extraordinarily conservative bunch. And they had nothing to say but everything is in decline. And there is no sign that anything significant is being done to substantially regenerate any aspect of declining habitats around the world. The only uptick that they could point at was the increase in tree planting in China, which, hey, yay, that sounds great, doesn't it? But what it really reflected was they had scalped gigantic sections of Chinese forest for decades. And this last year happened to be a pretty solid example of them doing some replanting. It means nothing in terms of actual health yet, but it is an uptick. And that was the only one. So I know I'm not being very humorous at this particular point, but again, this is a jaw-dropping piece that is getting zero airtime anywhere on mainstream media.
And then the other side of this is, okay, this is the rest of the world, but in the United States, we've got the Environmental Protection Agency telling its staff how to talk about climate change. Which I can't wait for Saturday Night Live and The Onion and Borowitz to get their hands on this, because, it's like, what a joke. And then there was this Energy Department study. I mean, if you want fake news and mind-fucking lies, the Energy Department has a new study that shows all these environmental reasons to keep using coal.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it. Carolyn, I just going to mention just a little bit about how excited I am. We've got a new offering that's launching this next month, and it's called an Advanced Practices Group, and I'm really excited about it. It's basically an opportunity for us to finally address what we've been seeing as we've been offering online symposia and summits and beautiful speakers coming in and talking about their body of work and how it fits in a collapse-aware community and this kind of stuff. All of those things are great, but what's been missing is some way of finding continuity, some way to make connection and have relationship with other people, kindred spirits and allies, and to be able to do the inner work that needs to be done if somebody sincerely wants to generate any kind of resilience in the face of this chaotic world, this insane world that is happening right now. Yeah. We're not waiting for 2050 or 2100 or all those other projections. This is it. We're up to our earlobes in it now. So I just wanted to mention how excited I am that that's going on.
Yeah, me too. And, I'm so glad we're doing this because, it's one thing to give out information and get new ideas from these wonderful speakers that we've had. And it's another thing to say, okay, how do we apply this to our lives to make living through this insane time more resilient for ourselves? How do we become more resilient as we row our little lifeboats through this ocean of shit?
Yeah. Well, I don't think either of us is doing a particularly good job right this moment of bringing any humor. And I don't know that I'm going to help much right here, but I'm also really inclined to say this, that since the beginning of the year in particular, I've seen a lot of very dear friends flagging. Really folks that are very much in this collapse-aware community, even as far-reaching as the extinction folks, the near-term human extinction folks, which is, for those who are unaware of those folks, they are indeed proponents of or advocates of that's what's coming is near-term human extinction. And what I've seen is a lot of flagging. What I mean by that is a lot of signs of stress, a lot of signs of stress behavior, a lot of signs of kind of breaks in relationship that tend to happen for most of us when we do get stressed. When we get to kind of the end of our wick or our capacity, we then start to act out, and it starts to be difficult to maintain any kind of spaciousness, any kind of open heart is almost impossible at that point. And what I'm seeing is also not in the close circles that I was just mentioning. So a layer out from there, I'm hearing more and more stories of, if it's suicide or if it's radical stress behavior, or acting out in communities. I guess the far ends of that would be the times when people snap and do the mass killings.
Mm-hmm.
To rein it in from there. I'm not trying to say that my dear friends or the folks I'm closest with are anywhere near that. Please don't hear that. But I just really got to put my foot down, and I'm glad you and I both have, and we're offering with as much love and light and core joy as we possibly can these alternatives to just sitting there suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, the truth is the whole freaking planet is in trauma. And particularly here in the United States, we can see it up close and personal because this is where we are. And it doesn't work to just sit and go, I'm in trauma, and then try to muddle through life, without doing this inner work that we are offering people an opportunity to do in community, holding each other's hands, and not being alone with it. I don't know that there's anything else like it out there.
Yeah. You've been doing a great job of keeping a particular thread. One of the only really inspiring threads that I can think of right now is the leadership that's coming out of the young people from Parkland, Florida, and elsewhere. Across the country. It's so
Right.
catching fire, and thank goodness it is.
Yeah.
And I guess she's sort of a reluctant leader of leaders, Emma Gonzalez. The quote, the meme that you posted in the DND today, the Daily News Digest that you post virtually every day. It's something about that. Well, just about every.
You want me to read it? I've got it in front of me.
Oh, that'd be great.
Sure. Emma says, it's probably going to be years, and at this point, I don't know that I mind. Nothing that's worth it is easy. We're going against the largest gun lobby. We could very well die trying to do this, but we could very well die not trying to do this too. So why not die for something rather than nothing?
Yeah. So that right there, when I look at, so what keeps me, how do I keep myself from a level of despair that just wears me out, that exhausts me, that takes me to the edge of, to the brink of, my limit, my capacity to be present or even just to stay alive in the face of these incredible stressors that are going on. And there's that, those students who should be concerning themselves with prom dresses and who's going to the game with who, and all the usual stuff, they're leading this country in ways, possibly leading the world in not just gun issues. This
Right.
is not just guns. They're not stopping there, and thank goodness they're not. And I just want to point to, I spent some time with Carlos Castañeda and his kind of crew at the time a few decades ago. And one thing I got was a few distinctions about what they call the assemblage point, where we assemble ourselves, our identity, who we think we are, how the world shows up for us. And, if I could just take a little poetic license with their work, Carlos and Don Monjanero and so on, they asserted that really there were only two things that could change somebody, that could move that assemblage point, because its job is to stay in place, keep the world in tight control.
Right.
And the only two things that they acknowledged was either the conscious and intentional strike or touch from a shaman, from your mentor, from the Nagual in their case, which by the way, nobody has access to that. Or how many times have we heard stories of people coming close to death through trauma?
Right.
And to then bang, the universe will smack the shit out of you, move that assemblage point.
Which
And
is what
for
happened to
many
the kids.
people, we hear the story of my life changed at that moment. My priorities shifted. I decided to spend more time with my kids. I quit the 9-to-5 job, whatever it is, you know, different people in different ways. But it's rare that we can say that those people who are shifted in that way come back saying, I really need to do more work, make more money, see my kids less, you know, love my spouse less, and so on.
Right.
It's clearly there's some kind of a trend there.
Yeah.
What I thought then when I was studying with those folks and what I'm thinking now, after years of developing some sort of alternative, is that there is in fact some kind of alternative. That if you've got the one person in a billion who gets a chance to be with a nagual, with a mentor, with a shaman, great, good for you. And I hope that the rest of us, never have to experience what the kids in Parkland had to experience. So what I'm thrilled to be sharing in what we've got coming up and in the work that we're designing is there's got to be an alternative to those two options. And I'm absolutely committed that that's where we're headed. That's what we're going to be offering.
Well, I'd just like to say a little bit more about that, Dean, because that's such an important point. You know, I have some concern for the kids. They are so awake, they're so on fire. And I have some concern that eventually they're going to need to really do some deep work themselves, their inner work. I was listening to Cameron Kasky, who's one of Emma's fellow students at the march, and he was talking about, you know, he's so busy and he's studying and he's organizing for these marches and for the protests and so forth. And he said, you know, at night, when the day is over, my homework is done, I put down my phone. He said, it all comes back. You know, what happened that day on February 14th comes back to me. And, you know, it just drives me crazy. And so there's grieving that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And, you know, and for that to happen, people need a hand to hold. They need a sense of community around them. And what really happens to activists, if they don't grieve those kinds of things, is they burn out.
Yeah.
Because the tears are necessary to water the fire. And so that's true with us. That's true with anybody, regardless of age. And so that's one of the tiny pieces of inner work that we're going to be offering to folks is, how do we grieve the staggering losses of these times with each other?
Yeah.
A safe space where we're really supported for doing that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Carolyn, I'm banking on you to, as we're heading toward the end of our little recording here, I'm banking on you to pull us out of this nosedive of somber and sober, which has actually been good. I so appreciate what you brought and a chance to say what I brought. But what else you got?
Well, you know, everything is just so mired in scandal right now. And, you know, I mean, you have to laugh. You have to have some you have to have some humor about this, because if you don't, you will lose your mind. And it's just it's so amazing to just watch, you know, to watch the extreme darkness and then to see the candle of light that's being lit in the middle of it by these kids. You know, that's my inspiration. That's what gives me a little tickle in my tummy and, you know, and brightens my day, is just to look at this and say, wow, you know, like, thank God for these folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't have any jokes though, you know.
Yeah, I've always been terrible at telling jokes anyway.
Yeah.
You know, what I'd like to do to finish up from my side is thank you so much for, I'm sorry, I get them mixed up if it was yesterday or today on the DND.
Uh-huh.
And at the bottom where the more inspirational stuff comes around. You included something about a Japanese teacher and just treats his children with such beautiful respect and invokes in evokes from them a remarkable, delicate truth from each one of them, through writing that they do and sharing that they do. And, it's a great little film. I would just recommend folks look it up. It's on
KarmaTube,
mhm.
KARMA tube, like YouTube, KarmaTube, and the title of it is A Teacher in Tokyo. And he is amazing. I mean, man, this guy is what you would really think of, or he's exemplary of a deeply evolved elder. And the wisdom and love that he's teaching these kids is just fucking phenomenal. So, A Teacher in Tokyo on KarmaTube.
Yep. So just thank you for including that, for bringing it to my attention. One thing I'm doing, I'm creating some exercises so that some new warriors, some of the men in the Southern Oregon area where I live, that I meet with on a regular basis, we're going to be doing some exercises to bring out another layer of leadership and clarity for each of us. And it really made me think, who are the exemplars
Mm-hmm.
of people who are leading now? We talked about these Parkland youth, and I'm sorry, but that's also insane. To ask of our high school youth to lead us,
Right,
as a nation, is just insane.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. I please
It's
don't.
wonderful
don't hear
and
that.
it's insane.
Yeah. I'm not saying it shouldn't be happening, but I'm saying it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
When I think about this teacher in Japan, it just made me think. I'm starting a list. It's an ongoing list, and it's a list of who are my heroes now.
Yeah.
People who are bringing forth the qualities of presence and action and grace and creativity in the face of a predicament-laden world.
Yeah.
So that's how I got moved by your sharing of that, and that particular teacher in his style. What a gift. What a great guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You got anything else?
No, I'm good. And, I think this is enough for folks for right now. We're going to do this probably weekly, right? And,
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And gosh, we're going to have to work really hard on getting more humor.
Yeah, we'll
Because,
definitely work on
things aren't crazy enough.
that. Yeah, right. Because you do. Got to laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Carolyn, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Dean. Take care.
For listening to another episode of the Impossible Conversation podcast, produced by Dean Walker and Living Resilience. Music provided today by Port Blue, Into the Sea. To be considered as a guest on the Impossible Conversation podcast, or to set up coaching, speaking arrangements, workshops, online resilience education, and resilience bridge trainings, contact us at livingresilience.earth or impossibleconversation.net, safecircle@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter @safecircle.